The first thing you see is not a prison bus or gray concrete walls. It is a crystal chandelier hanging over a hotel ballroom in Houston, Texas. Soft golden light falls over a small private room inside the Magnolia Grand Hotel. White tablecloths, silverware, fresh flowers. Everything looks ready for a quiet, expensive dinner. But no one is eating. At the front of the room, a woman in a long, dark dress stands behind a simple podium. A silk wrap covers her hair. Her back is straight, her chin lifted. Her name is Naomi Hart. A few steps away, a man in a wrinkled suit spreads his arms like he is about to hug her. His tie is crooked. His shoes are dull. This is Malik Jordan, the man who once called himself Naomi's husband. Near the door, a woman in a tight dress shifts on her high heels. Strong perfume, bright lipstick. This is Tasha Reed, the friend who used to sit at Naomi's kitchen table and say, "Girl, I'm happy for you." Naomi does not move into the hug. She lifts her hand between them, palm toward Malik like a stop sign. "Stop," she says. "Don't you dare touch me with those hands." Her voice is quiet, but in the still room it cuts through the air like glass. Malik freezes. His arms hang there for a second, then slowly drop. "Naomi, come on," he whispers. "We don't have to do this. I'm here to fix things." I know I made mistakes, but his words vanish as the room suddenly grows dim. A soft humming starts above them. A white screen slides down from the ceiling behind Naomi. The projector clicks on. Pale light spills over her shoulders. "Before you talk about love," she says, eyes locked on Malik's face. "Watch this." On the screen, a kitchen appears. The counters are the same ones Naomi used to wipe every night. The camera angle is high and crooked, like it was hidden near the ceiling. In the video, a woman stands at the counter with her back to the camera. Leggings, old t-shirt, hair wrapped in a scarf. She opens a packet and pours a fine powder into a glass of warm milk. Tasha, the real Tasha, gasps. Her hand flies to her mouth. On the screen, a man walks in behind her. He laughs, takes a spoon, and stirs the glass. For a brief second, his face turns toward the camera. Malik. In the video, he leans close and says, "Clear as day, if we keep the dose small, nobody will ever know." She already looks sick all the time anyway. Once the insurance money comes in, we're out of Houston. In the hotel room, Malik's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. On the screen, the Malik in the video carries the glass down a short hallway and places it on a nightstand. A woman is sleeping in the bed, turned slightly on her side. The camera is too far to show her face clearly, but everyone in the room knows who she is, Naomi Hart. The video freezes on the image of the glass beside her pillow. If that woman in the bed were you, what would you do? Hold that question in your mind. To understand how Naomi walked from that bed to this podium, we have to go back in time. Not years, only a few months. Back to a cold morning in March of 2024, in Houston, Texas. Back to the day Naomi opened her eyes and found out she was worth less than a hospital bill to the man she loved. Before we rewind, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. It helps this channel grow so I can bring you more stories like Naomi's. Alright, let's go back to where it all began. The first thing Naomi Hart smelled when she started to wake up was the sharp, sour scent of antiseptic. It was the kind of smell that clung to everything: sheets, curtains, skin. Her eyelids felt as if someone had set bags of wet sand on top of them. Her mouth was dry, her body felt heavy and far away. She tried to move a finger. For a long second, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the tip of her right index finger twitched against the rough hospital sheet. "Okay," she thought weakly. "I'm still here." The thought moved slowly through the fog in her head. Memories slid past like shadows. There had been pain, a pounding behind her eyes, a night when the room spun. Malik's voice, sharp and distant. Then darkness. Now there was only this room. With effort, Naomi pushed against the weight on her eyelids and opened her eyes a crack. Bright light stabbed into them. She shut them again with a small sound. The light above her was not sunlight. It was the flat white of hospital lamps. "Okay," she whispered. Her voice sounded like paper. "Hospital." She tried again, slower. Open. Blink. Pause. blink again, until the light hurt less. The room came into focus a little at a time. White ceiling, tiny cracks in the paint, a square vent humming with air, a thin curtain on a metal track, a pale gray wall, a silver rail on the side of her bed. A heart monitor beeped beside her, steady and slow. Naomi turned her head a little to the right. The motion felt like it took all her strength. She expected to see someone there, a man in a work shirt, slumped in a plastic chair, maybe Malik's head bent over his phone, pretending to work while really scrolling through videos. For 5 years of marriage, Naomi had pictured that kind of scene. She had believed that if she ever got really sick, she would wake up and see her husband dozing in a chair, fingers still wrapped around her hand. Her eyes landed on the visitor's chair. Empty. The cushion was smooth. No dent from someone sitting there all night. No jacket over the back. No coffee cup on the floor. Her gaze moved slowly around the room. No flowers. No get-well-soon card. No sign of Malik's cologne. Nothing. A cold, thin hand seemed to slide into Naomi's chest and squeeze. Maybe he went home to shower, she told herself. People went home to shower, to change clothes. Maybe he went to talk to the doctor. Maybe. Her eyes caught something on the small table next to her bed. A plastic cup of water with a clear lid and a straw. A thin layer of dust sat on the lid. Next to the cup lay a single folded piece of paper. It looked like it had been torn from a spiral notebook. No envelope. Uneven edges. The crease down the middle was rough, as if it had been folded in a hurry. Naomi stared at it, not wanting to reach for it. Her heart began to beat faster, each thump loud in her ears. A part of her already knew this paper was not going to say, "I'm right outside, I'll be back soon." Her fingers trembled as she lifted her hand. The muscles in her arm burned. It took almost half a minute just to reach the paper and pinch one corner. She dragged it closer. The handwriting on the outside was familiar even before she opened it. Sharp, rushed, a little angry, like each letter had been scratched into the page. Malik. Her chest tightened. She unfolded the paper with clumsy hands. There were only a few lines. No greeting. No, dear Naomi. No date. Just his words. Pay your own hospital bill when you wake up. I'm done carrying dead weight. Don't call me. Don't look for me. I'm gone. For a second, Naomi did not understand. The words sat on the page, black and ugly. They did not move. They did not soften. Dead weight. Her. Slowly the meaning sank in. Malik had not just left the room. He had left the marriage. He had walked away from her, from the hospital, from the woman he once promised to love in sickness and in health. He had done it on a scrap of notebook paper. Something inside Naomi's chest cracked, quiet and deep. The paper slipped from her fingers and floated to the floor. The heart monitor beside her kept beeping, steady and calm. Tears rose so fast she could not stop them. They burned the dry skin of her cheeks. She tried to swallow, tried to breathe, but a sob broke free from somewhere deep in her chest. The sound startled even her. She turned her face toward the ceiling and let the tears come. They slid into her hair, onto the stiff pillow. Her shoulders shook with each broken breath. I really am nothing, she thought wildly. He's right. I'm just a bill. A problem. A weight. Naomi had no parents to call, no brothers or sisters to rush in. The last of her blood family had passed away years ago, long before she met Malik. For 5 years, she had told herself he was her world, her home, her only safe place. Now that world had walked out and left a note on the nightstand. Somewhere outside the room, a nurse laughed. A cart rolled by. Inside, Naomi's sobs filled the air. She did not know how long she cried. Long enough for her eyes to swell and her throat to ache. Long enough for her body to feel hollow. When the door handle finally turned with a soft click, Naomi did not move at first. She thought it was a nurse coming to check her IV. Maybe someone from the office about money. She did not expect the smell of expensive cologne to drift into the room. It pushed the antiseptic back just a little. "Miss Hart?" A deep, steady voice asked. Naomi slowly turned her head toward the door. A tall black man stood just inside, closing the door quietly behind him. He wore a dark suit that fit his shoulders, a white shirt, and a simple tie. His hair was cut neat, touched with gray at the temples. His face was calm, not cold, not sorry, just attentive. He did not look like a doctor. He did not have a stethoscope. He did not look like someone from billing. There was something old-fashioned in the way he held himself. For a moment, she wondered if she was still dreaming. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping at her cheeks with the back of her hand. I think you have the wrong room." He glanced down at the paper on the floor, then back at her face. His eyes softened, his jaw tightened. "No," he said quietly. "This is the right room." He took a few steps closer and gave a small bow of his head. "My name is Sterling Holt," he said. "You can call me Mr. Sterling. I worked for your father for many years." Naomi blinked. "My father?" she asked slowly. "I don't have a father. He died when I was a kid. At least, that's what Malik told me." Mr. Sterling's gaze stayed on her, steady and kind. "Your father's name was Langston Hart," he said gently. "He spent the last years of his life searching for you. That search led me here, to this room, to you." The monitor's beeping seemed louder. Naomi's weak hands gripped the blanket. "I think you're confused," she whispered. "I'm nobody. Just Naomi." "Just Malik's," her voice cracked around the word wife. "Mr." Sterling stepped a little closer, careful, like someone walking on thin ice. "Naomi," he said, and now his tone carried weight. "Whatever that man wrote on that paper, you are not dead weight. He just threw away a diamond so he could bend down and pick up a rock from the street." His words hung between them. Naomi wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, she whispered, "A diamond? Me?" Her mind flashed back to the empty chair, the dusty water cup, the cruel little note on the floor. How could a woman who had to count every dollar for groceries ever be a diamond? Mr. Sterling reached into the slim leather bag he carried and pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it so she could see. On the screen, a younger Naomi smiled back at her. Her hair was styled in soft waves. She wore a dress that clearly cost more than her old monthly rent. Beside her stood an older man with strong features and kind eyes, his arm around her shoulders. They stood in front of a wide stone house with tall trees and a curved driveway, a house Naomi had only seen in dreams. Her breath caught. The tablet trembled in Mr. Sterling's hand as she reached out and brushed the glass with her fingertips, as if she could touch that other Naomi, that other life. Who is that?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. "That," Mr. Sterling said softly, "is you. Naomi Hart. Only daughter of Langston Hart. And whether you believe it yet or not, this hospital bed is not where your story ends. It's where it begins again." Outside, the city of Houston kept moving. Cars rolled past the tall buildings of the Texas Medical Center. People hurried to work and school and coffee. Inside that quiet room, on a simple hospital bed, a woman who thought she had been thrown away like trash was about to find out she had always been a diamond. And the man who had just called her dead weight had no idea who he had walked away from. Naomi stared at the photo on the tablet for a long time. The girl on the screen looked like her, but brighter. Her eyes were clear, her smile wide, her shoulders relaxed. She stood like someone who had never once wondered if she deserved to exist. Naomi could barely remember what it felt like to stand that way. "That was taken at the house in River Oaks," Mr. Sterling said quietly. "You used to run down those front steps and jump straight into your father's arms. He'd come home from the office, and you'd yell, 'Daddy, you're late!' even when he was early." Naomi let out a small, broken laugh. It sounded strange in the cold room. "I don't remember," she whispered. "It's like watching a movie about somebody else." "That's what trauma does," he answered. "It puts walls around certain memories, but walls can crack. Sometimes it only takes one picture, or one voice." He let the silence rest for a moment, then added, "Your father never stopped looking for you, Naomi, even when the police closed your case, even when years passed. He made me promise that as long as I was alive, I would keep searching. I kept that promise. That's why I'm here." Her throat tightened. "Has really gone?" she asked. "Yes," Mr. Sterling said softly. "He passed 2 years ago, but he left everything to you. The house, the companies, the foundation he wanted to build. All of it." Naomi blinked back fresh tears. Not the wild, panicked tears from before, but a slower, heavier kind. "So all this time," she whispered. "I thought I was lucky Malik took me in. I thought I owed him my life. And the whole time," she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "The whole time," Mr. Sterling said for her, "you were the one keeping him afloat. Not just emotionally, financially too." He swiped to another screen. This time, it was not a picture. It was a bank statement. And then another. And another. The numbers told their own story. Transfers. Withdrawals. Little by little, the joint savings she had worked so hard to build, all leaving their account and landing in another one with Tasha Reed's name on it. Naomi's fingers curled in the blanket. She wanted to be surprised. She wanted to say, "No, that can't be right. Malik wouldn't do that. Tasha would never." But deep inside, in the part of her that had learned to overlook late nights and strange smells on Malik's clothes, it did not feel surprising at all. It felt like the missing piece of a puzzle she had tried not to look at. "He took the money we saved?" she asked, voice thin. "The money I skipped haircuts for, the money I counted coupons for, all of it?" "Not all," Mr. Sterling said, "but enough. Enough to say he never planned to carry you when you were weak. He planned to spend your strength until you had nothing left." The heart monitor kept beeping, regular and steady. Naomi stared at the ceiling. For 5 years, she had told herself the same story every time Malik raised his voice, or threw a plate, or rolled his eyes when she talked about her day. "Hez under stress, Hez trying his best. He saved me. I should be more grateful." Now a different story was trying to take its place. A harder story, a truer one. "What do I even do with all of this?" she asked finally. "I can't even sit up without help. How am I supposed to be some heiress? Some owner?" "You don't have to decide everything tonight," Mr. Sterling said. "Right now, you rest. Tomorrow will come, with or without our permission. When it does, we will meet it." As if on cue, Naomi's phone buzzed on the nightstand. The sound was small, but in the quiet room it felt loud. She and Mr. Sterling both looked at it. The screen was cracked. The case was cheap and worn. Across the top, one name lit up. Malik. Naomi's heart jumped in her chest. For a second, she saw him as she had always tried to see him. Tired but loving, stressed but loyal, a man trying his best in a hard world. Maybe he had left the note in anger. Maybe he had calmed down. Maybe Mr. Sterling reached over and picked up the phone. He did not answer it. He held it out to her instead. "This is your choice," he said. "You can let it ring, or you can hear what he has to say. But whatever you choose, remember what you've seen tonight." Naomi stared at the phone, the cracked glass flashing with each vibration. She swallowed, took a shallow breath, and slid her thumb across the screen. She barely got the phone to her ear before Malik's voice poured through it, sharp and familiar. "You finally awake?" he snapped. "About time. Listen, tomorrow I'm coming by the hospital with my lawyer. We're going to sign the divorce papers and get this over with." Naomi's lips parted, but no sound came out. On the other side of the line, Malik kept talking. "Don't start crying or making this dramatic," he said. "You know you've never brought in real money. I've been carrying you for years. I need a partner who can stand next to me, not someone who lives at the pharmacy and the doctor's office. So you're going to sign whatever my lawyer puts in front of you. No alimony, no property, nothing. You understand? Because you didn't earn any of it." Naomi's eyes burned. Her hand shook around the phone. She looked at Mr. Sterling. His jaw was tight, his brows drawn together, but he stayed silent. "Malik," she whispered finally. Her voice surprised even her. It sounded small and far away. "Did you ever love me?" There was a pause. For a second she thought she heard something softer on the other end. Maybe a memory. A crack. Then he laughed, a short, ugly laugh. "Don't start with that," he said. "Love doesn't pay hospital bills. Just be ready. 10 a.m. And Naomi, don't show up with some sad little public defender. You won't like how that ends." The line went dead. Naomi kept the phone pressed to her ear for a few seconds, listening to nothing. Then she lowered it slowly and handed it back to Mr. Sterling. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "Hez bringing a lawyer, and I can't even stand up yet." "Mr." Sterling set the phone down with care. as if it might shatter with one wrong move. "You don't have to stand to sign your name," he said, "and you don't have to be strong to decide you're done being weak. He thinks tomorrow is the end of something, Naomi. He has no idea it will be the beginning." Naomi let the words sink in. For the first time since she woke up, anger and grief were not the only things in her chest. There was something else, small but solid, like a seed pressing up under the soil. She did not know its name yet, but she knew it refused to die. "Then we'll be ready at 10, she said quietly. The next morning, the sun over Houston rose through a thin layer of fog. From the tall windows of the hospital, the city looked like it was holding its breath. Inside Naomi's room, the air was still. Someone had come early to help her wash her face, brush her teeth, and wrap a simple scarf over her hair. The color in her cheeks was still pale, but her eyes, though swollen from crying, were clear. Mr. Sterling stood in the corner, behind the curtain. In his hand was a small camera, its red light glowing. He had explained his plan in a calm voice. "He thinks he's in control," Head said. "He thinks you have no one, that he can say whatever he wants and walk away clean. Let him talk. Let him show us who he is, one last time." Naomi had agreed, not because she enjoyed the idea, but because something inside her needed to see Malik with open eyes. No more excuses, no more stories piled over the truth. At 5 minutes to 10, the door swung open without a knock. Malik Jordan walked in like he owned the place. The man who stepped into her room did not look like the husband she used to wait up for on the couch. His suit was sharp, his haircut fresh. The new promotion at work had added a little swagger to his step. On his arm, clinging like ivy, was Tasha Reed. Tasha's hair was straightened and glossy. She wore a tight dress and high heels that clicked loudly on the tile. A designer purse hung from her wrist, one Naomi recognized it was the kind she used to cut out and circle in catalogs, then tell herself, maybe one day. Now it dangled from Tasha's hand like a toy. Naomi lowered her eyes for a second, not from shame but to hide the flash of anger that shot through them. Malik didn't bother with hello. He walked straight to the bed and tossed a thick red folder onto her legs. The weight of it made her flinch. "There," he said. "Sign at the flags. My lawyer highlighted everything you need." He didn't ask how she felt. He didn't say he was glad she was alive. He looked at her as if she were a task on his to-do list. Tasha gave a little pitying smile. "Naomi," she said in a sweet tone Naomi suddenly heard as fake, "it's really better this way. Malik needs someone who can stand beside him at events, you know, not someone who's always in a hospital gown. You understand, right?" Naomi lifted her head. For a moment, she let her lower lip tremble, let her eyes shine with tears. She knew how to cry. She had done it alone in bathrooms and in bed while Malik snored beside her. "Is there really no second chance?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Not even after everything we've been through?" Malik snorted. "A second chance?" he said loudly. "For what? So I can keep dragging a sick woman around like an anchor? I'm done, Naomi. Trash belongs outside. I'm not keeping it in my house." The word trash landed like a slap. Behind the curtain, Mr. Sterling's hand tightened on the camera, but he stayed where he was. Naomi's heart squeezed. Old memories pushed up Malik bringing her soup when she had the flu, the way he used to dance with her in the kitchen when money was tight but their love felt big. For a brief second, the younger version of her wanted to beg, to say, "I'll do better, I'll get healthier, I'll make more money, please don't leave." But the woman in the hospital bed was not the same as the one who had walked into that marriage. She looked down at the folder. Her name was printed on the front, Naomi Jordan, a name that would no longer exist once she signed. Her thumb rubbed lightly over the first page. The legal phrases blurred together until a few stood out. Waives all rights. No claim to marital property. No spousal support. It was clear. If she signed this, Malik walked away with everything they had built together, and she walked away with nothing. Nothing, except the truth. The pen felt heavy in her fingers. Her hand shook, partly from weakness, partly on purpose. She let Malik think she was barely holding it together. Inside, she made herself a promise. "This will not be the signature of a victim," she told herself. "This will be the signature of a woman who is done begging." Letter by letter, slowly, she wrote her name, Naomi Hart. When she finished, Malik snatched the folder as if he were afraid she might change her mind. Relief washed over his face. He smiled widely at Tasha, leaned down, and kissed her cheek right there beside Naomi's bed. It should have ripped Naomi's heart in half. Instead, it hardened something that had already started to change. Malik turned back to her. "We're done," he said. "From today on, we're strangers. Don't call me. Don't come to my job. Don't show up at my new house asking for money. I don't ever want to see your face again. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." A moment later, the curtain in the corner slid back. Mr. Sterling stepped out, the small camera still running in his hand. His eyes burned with anger, but his voice, when he spoke, was soft. "Are you all right, Miss Hart?" he asked. Naomi wiped the last false tears from her face. Her jaw tightened. "I'm better than I've ever been," she said. She looked at the door where Malik had just disappeared. "The trash took itself out," she added quietly. "Now get everything ready for my discharge, Mr. Sterling. I'm done lying in this bed. I want to go home." Not to the small apartment she had shared with Malik. Home. To the stone house in River Oaks she could almost remember. To the life she hadn't known was hers. Outside, the city kept moving. But for Naomi Hart, everything had just shifted. The girl who thought she was lucky to be chosen had just been thrown away. The woman she was becoming planned to make sure the one who did it would one day understand exactly what he had lost. Naomi left the hospital 2 days later. The nurses were surprised at how quickly her paperwork was handled. Bills that should have taken weeks to process disappeared with a few calls from Mr. Sterling. She did not see a single invoice. No one pulled her aside to talk about payment plans. It felt strange after so many years of counting every dollar. When the orderly wheeled her to the front doors, the Texas sun hit her face like a warm hand. For a moment she squinted, blinking against the light. People moved in and out of the main entrance, heading to work, to visits, to surgery. A black sedan waited at the curb. It was not a rideshare with a dented bumper and old air freshener. The car was polished to a shine. The driver wore a cap and gloves. As soon as he saw her, he stepped forward and opened the back door. "For you, Miss Hart," he said. Naomi hesitated. For the last 5 years, she had taken buses and cheap rides, clipping coupons and checking gas prices. She had walked in worn-out shoes so Malik could wear new ones. She had learned how to stretch a single package of chicken for 3 meals. Sliding into the back seat of a car like this felt wrong, like trying on a life that didn't belong to her. "Go ahead," Mr. Sterling said quietly beside her, his hand steady on the wheelchair. "This isn't a favor. This is yours." She took a breath and stood with his help. Her legs wobbled, but they held. She eased herself into the cool leather seat. The door shut with a soft, solid sound that wrapped her in silence. As the car pulled away from the hospital, Naomi looked out the window. Houston slid past traffic lights, strip malls, fast food signs, then taller buildings downtown. Glass towers caught the sun. Billboards promised luxury apartments and fitness clubs. She watched people at bus stops and on street corners and thought, that used to be me. Bag on my shoulder, worry in my stomach, counting days until the next paycheck. The car left the highway and turned onto streets lined with trees and brick walls. The houses grew larger, the lawns wider. Black iron gates guarded long driveways. It was a world just a few miles from where she had lived, yet it felt like another country. Finally, the sedan slowed in front of a tall gate with an H worked into the iron. The gate opened as if it had been waiting for her. Beyond it, a long driveway curved past trimmed hedges and a wide green lawn. A stone house rose at the end, graceful and solid, with white columns and large windows. A fountain in the center of the drive sent water into the air in clear, shining streams. Naomi's breath caught. A flash of memory flickered at the edge of her mind. Small feet running down stone steps, the feel of strong arms catching her in midair, a man's laugh rumbling against her ear. It was there for a second, sharp and bright. Then it was gone, leaving a hollow ache behind. The car rolled to a stop under a covered entry. When the driver opened the door, Naomi swung her legs out carefully. Her hospital band was still on her wrist. Her clothes were plain. She felt like a visitor sneaking onto someone else's property. A line of people stood just inside the front doors, men and women of different ages, dressed in neat uniforms and simple work clothes. They waited in a straight row, hands folded. A flash of memory flickered at the edge of her mind. Small feet running down stone steps, the feel of strong arms catching her in midair, a man's laugh rumbling against her ear. It was there for a second, sharp and bright. Then it was gone, leaving a hollow ache behind. The car rolled to a stop under a covered entry. When the driver opened the door, Naomi swung her legs out carefully. Her hospital band was still on her wrist. Her clothes were plain. She felt like a visitor sneaking onto someone else's property. A line of people stood just inside the front doors, men and women of different ages, dressed in neat uniforms and simple work clothes. They waited in a straight row, hands folded. "Your father kept the house just as it was," he said. "He believed he would bring you back to it one day. After he passed, I made sure nothing important changed." They led her to a guest suite on the first floor so she wouldn't have to climb stairs. Inside, someone had prepared everything: a soft robe, clean pajamas, a stack of towels, a tray with tea and light food. In the bathroom, under the bright lights, Naomi caught her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked tired. Her hair was wrapped in a simple scarf. Her hospital bracelet peeked from under the sleeve of her sweatshirt. There were faint bruises under her eyes from lack of sleep, and a line between her brows that had not been there in the picture on Mr. Sterling's tablet. She leaned forward, studying her face. "Who are you?" she whispered. "A woman who begged, or a woman who built?" The next few days passed in a blur of small steps. A private doctor came to check on her. A nutritionist sat with her and went over foods to rebuild her strength. A quiet woman with gentle hands helped her wash her hair and showed her how to wrap a silk scarf so it framed her face instead of hiding it. One afternoon, Mr. Sterling led her down a hallway into a room that felt different from the rest of the house. It was large, with tall windows and heavy curtains pulled back to let in the light. Floor-to-ceiling shelves covered one wall, filled with binders and books. At the far end of the room stood a big desk of dark wood, the surface worn smooth in front of the chair. "This was your father's office," Mr. Sterling said. "It is yours now." Naomi stepped forward slowly. She ran her fingers over the back of the leather chair, then sat down. The seat creaked softly, as if it remembered another weight. On the desk were 3 neat stacks of folders. On top of the first, a label: Heart, Global Energy and Development, Overview. On the second, Ownership and Shares, Naomi Hart. On the third, Key Personnel, Executive Summary. Naomi stared at her name. She thought of the red folder Malik had thrown on her hospital bed, her signature pressed down in shaky ink. That signature had erased her claim to the little life she had built with him. This stack of papers carried a different kind of weight. "If this feels like too much, we can take it slowly," Mr. Sterling said. "Your father had a board of experienced people. You don't have to be an expert overnight. But I believe you should at least know what your name is on." Naomi opened the overview folder. Charts, lists, company names, a web of businesses in energy, construction, development, teams in Houston, Dallas, Atlanta. Projects in progress, contracts signed, her father's work. Halfway through, she felt her heart rate climb. "I don't know this language," she said, almost apologetic. "I know how to stretch a paycheck. I know how to calm a child at the clinic when their mother can't pay. But this is another planet. Every planet is just dirt and rock until someone learns how to walk on it," Mr. Sterling replied. "You're not starting from nothing, Naomi. You paid attention in ways you don't even realize. Your father trusted your mind. So do I." She turned to the third folder. Names and titles: CEO, CFO, heads of divisions. She scanned down the page, eyes skimming until they stopped on one line. Malik Jordan, project manager, Hart Urban Development, Houston Division. Something cold slid down her spine. "He works for us," she said slowly. "For me?" "Yes, Mr. Sterling said. "Your father's company bought his firm 3 years ago. Has been in charge of a major redevelopment project downtown." Naomi's fingers tightened around the folder. "All those nights he came home late, talking about the big project, sighing over how his boss didn't understand him, complaining that he was always undervalued. He had never once mentioned that the company signing his checks had her family's name on it. "Show me his project," she said. They spent the next week at that desk. Advisors came in to explain the basics, the structure of Hart Global, the difference between owning stock and running the day-to-day, the way money moved in and out of each division. Some nights Naomi went to bed with a headache, numbers swirling behind her eyes. A few times she pushed back from the desk and stood staring out the window, wanting to run far away from all of it. "I'm a fraud," she told Mr. Sterling once, when frustration boiled over. "I'm a former receptionist in a pediatric clinic. I get nervous calling the phone company. How am I supposed to sit at the head of anything?" Mr. Sterling watched her quietly. "Do you think your father built all of this without ever feeling like he was in over his head?" he asked. "He started with one small contracting business and a used truck. The first time he went to a bank to ask for a loan, his hands shook so badly he nearly dropped his papers. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Naomi. It's walking anyway." She thought of the little girl running down the steps, of the man in the photos who had kept looking for her. Slowly, she sat back down. When they finally finished going through the initial files, Naomi returned to the page with Malik's name. "Now his project," she said. "Every line of it." What they found was not a giant crime. It was small things, numbers that didn't match perfectly, costs nudged upward, billing hours that seemed padded, nothing that would jump off the page to a distracted eye. But Naomi was no longer distracted. "Has not stealing millions," she said, flipping through the sheets, "has just cutting corners, shaving off pieces for himself. Pieces still add up," Mr. Sterling said, "and more than the money, it shows his character. He takes what he thinks no one will miss." Naomi leaned back in the chair. "He thinks no one is watching," she murmured. She thought of the way he had spoken in her hospital room, loud, confident, certain no one would ever hold him accountable. "Send an internal notice," she said slowly. "Let everyone in leadership know that the majority owner will visit Hart Tower next week. No details. Just that I'm coming for a review." Mr. Sterling raised an eyebrow. "You want to announce yourself?" "Yes," Naomi said. "I don't want to sneak in the back door. This is my company, my father's work. If I'm going to sit in that chair, I want them to see me walk to it." He nodded once. "As you wish, Miss Hart." Across town, in a glass office overlooking downtown Houston, Malik Jordan was living what he called the good part. He had a promotion, a new title, a team that jumped when he raised his voice, a girlfriend who looked good on his arm and laughed loudly at all his jokes. Naomi was out of his life on paper and, he told himself, out of his mind. He was in the break room, telling a story about a difficult city inspector, when one of his coworkers glanced at their phone and frowned. "Hey, did you see this?" she asked. "We're getting a visit from the new majority owner next week, some Hart family member. Surprise inspection." The room went quiet for a second. Malik snatched the phone, scanned the short email. His stomach dipped for half a moment, then steadied. "Good," he said, handing it back. "Maybe they'll finally see who's actually doing the work around here. Some rich old man wants to walk around and shake hands. It'll show him the real numbers." He smoothed his tie, imagining himself in a boardroom, impressing some gray-haired investor with his confidence and charm. In his mind, Naomi was still in a hospital bed, small and helpless, too far away to matter. The day of the visit arrived bright and clear. At Hart Tower, screens in the lobby and hallways displayed the company logo with a simple message: "Welcome, MS. Hart." Employees straightened their desks. Managers adjusted their ties. Even the security guards stood a little taller. Outside, a small line of black cars pulled up to the curb. Naomi stepped out of the first one. She wore a long, simple dress in a deep color that made her skin glow. A silk wrap framed her face. Her makeup was light, but her eyes were focused. She still moved with care. Her body was not fully back to its old strength, but there was a steadiness in her step. As she walked through the lobby, conversations dipped into silence. People stared, then dropped their eyes, sensing something they couldn't quite name. In the elevator, her reflection looked back at her in the mirrored walls. A month ago, she had stared at another ceiling, thinking she had nothing. Now she was riding toward the top floor of a building with her family name on it. On the executive level, the boardroom was already full. Directors sat around the long table, papers in front of them, eyes flicking toward the door. At the head of the table, the large leather chair was turned slightly away, facing the windows. Mr. Sterling stood near the wall, hands folded in front of him. "Send for Mr. Jordan," he told the assistant waiting by the door. In the hallway, Malik checked his reflection one more time. His suit looked good. His smile looked better. He straightened his shoulders and pushed the door open without knocking. He expected a few polite smiles, maybe a handshake, a chance to introduce himself. Instead, the room was silent. No one smiled. Some looked down at their papers. A few watched him with careful, unreadable faces. At the far end of the table, the chair with its back to him did not move. Malik cleared his throat. "Good morning," he said loudly. "I'm Malik Jordan, lead project manager on our downtown redevelopment." I thought I'd start with a brief overview of his voice sounded too big in the quiet room. It bounced off the walls and fell flat. After a few seconds, he stopped. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Where's the new boss?" "We don't have all day." "Mr." Sterling stepped forward and laid a folder on the table. The chair at the head of the table began to turn. Slowly, as if time itself had thickened, Malik saw one hand resting on the arm of the chair, then the edge of a silk wrap, then the line of a familiar jaw. The chair turned fully. Naomi Hart sat in the seat of power. Her face was calm. Her eyes were sharp and cool. There was no sign of the woman who had once begged him for kindness in a hospital room. For a long second, Malik simply stared. His mind flipped through possible explanations. This was a joke, a hallucination, a dream, but the fear rising in his chest told him it was none of those. "Naomi?" he croaked. What are you doing here?" She held his gaze. "Good morning, Mr. Jordan," she said. "My name is Naomi Hart. I own 90% of this company. That makes me your employer." She reached for the folder in front of her, the one with his project reports, and held it up. For a heartbeat, the room was utterly still. Then she let the folder fall. It hit the table with a flat, heavy slap, papers spilling to the floor. "This," she said, her voice even, "is not a welcome party. This is your performance review." For a long second after the folder hit the table, no one moved. Papers lay scattered near Malik's shoes. His own name stared up at him from the top page, printed in neat black letters. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I've spent the last few weeks learning what this company does," she said. "What my father built. What has my name on it now. And what you," she nodded toward the spilled reports, "have been doing with it." Malik's throat worked. "Naomi, I don't know what anyone has told you, but," she held up a hand. "This isn't about what someone told me," she said. "It's what I've seen, what the auditors found, what these numbers say." She picked up one of the pages and read calmly. Overbilling on subcontractors, inflated material costs, hours logged for workers who weren't there. Nothing huge enough to scream fraud at first glance. Just small cuts, over and over. She leaned back in the chair. "You're not bold enough to be a criminal mastermind, Malik. You're just greedy enough to think no one will notice you taking a little extra for yourself." A few of the directors shifted in their seats. Malik's face flushed. He looked around the table, searching for friendly eyes, but found only lowered gazes and tight jaws. Everyone does that," he said. "That's how this business works. You pad a little here, save a little there." "It's not like you did it in my father's company," Naomi cut in. "Under my name, while telling your wife you were struggling, that your boss didn't value you, that you were the only one carrying weight." The word wife hit him like a thrown stone. "Naomi, please." His voice cracked around the second word. "We don't have to do this in front of everyone. If you're angry about what happened between us, then we should absolutely do this in front of everyone," she said. She turned to Mr. Sterling. "Mr. Holt?" He stepped forward and laid another folder on the table, this one thicker. "Independent internal audit, completed last week," he said. "Every statement Miss Hart just made is documented in here, line by line." Naomi folded her hands. "I'm not going to drag this out," she said. "We have work to do." "So I'll give you two options, Mr. Jordan." Malik swallowed. "Options?" "Yes." She spoke as if she were deciding between two brands of coffee, not two futures. First option, immediate termination for cause and a contractual fine of $35,000 for violations of our ethics policy and misuse of company resources. The legal team tells me it's conservative. A low murmur moved around the room. 35, Malik managed. Naomi, I don't have that kind of money. You know that. Second option, Naomi continued, her voice steady. You keep your job, but not this job. You accept a demotion to warehouse staff in our central storage facility. Minimum wage. Full-time. We will garnish a portion of your paycheck every period until the full amount is repaid. It may take years. Malik stared at her. The warehouse? He repeated, as if the word were in a foreign language. You want me to be a stock boy? I have a degree. I've run teams. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, she said quietly. You told me I'd never earned anything, that I was dead weight, that love doesn't pay bills. Now, I'm giving you a chance to actually learn what it means to carry something. Laughter did not break out. No one clapped, but a few shoulders eased. A few heads nodded the slightest bit. Malik's eyes shone with a mixture of anger and panic. Naomi, listen. We were married, he said. We shared a life. You can't just throw me down into some warehouse like trash. He didn't seem to hear the way his own word hung in the air, coming back to him. Naomi did. For a heartbeat, a ghost from the hospital bed brushed past her. She saw him lying next to her on the nights he was kind. She heard him laughing with her over burnt toast in their first apartment. Those moments had been real. Not everything between them was poison. For just a moment, her heart tightened. It would be so easy to step back, to say, forget it, I'll let him go, I'll let him keep his promotion, I'll just walk away and not look back. He must have seen something flicker in her eyes, because he leaned forward. Please, he said, and this time his voice was softer. Naomi, we both made mistakes. I was under pressure. I said things I didn't mean. You're better than this. Don't do this to me. She almost laughed at that. Better than this. The image of his note on the dusty hospital nightstand flashed sharp and clear in her mind. Pay your own hospital bill. I'm done carrying dead weight. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. HR will send the revised contract. Marcus' eyes flicked to Malik with a calm professionalism. He had seen men fall from power before. In corporate towers, it just looked different than on the street. Mr. Jordan, he said, gesturing toward the door. Malik stood on stiff legs. As he walked past her, he paused, like he wanted to say one more thing. But whatever it was died in his throat. He followed Marcus out, the door closing softly behind them. Naomi looked around the room. If any of you have been cutting corners the way he has, she said mildly, I suggest you clean it up. I won't always give two options. Then she opened the next file on the agenda. The warehouse was a world away from glass offices and boardrooms. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of cardboard, dust, and sweat. Long aisles of metal shelving stretched out like streets, stacked with boxes marked with project numbers and dates. By late afternoon, Malik stood in the center of one aisle, wearing a gray polo shirt and a cheap badge that said M. Jordan, Warehouse. His dress shoes, the ones he had once chosen so carefully for client meetings, were already scuffed and powdery with dust. A man in his late 50s walked up, stocky and sure. His hair was thin, his hands rough. The name on his badge read C. Brown, Supervisor. Mr. Jordan, he said, his voice flat. I'm Clarence Brown. I run this place. Malik straightened automatically, old habits pushing him to assert himself. Look, he said, I don't know what they told you upstairs, but this is temporary. I've managed multi-million-dollar projects. I'm not exactly. Mr. Brown held up a hand. Upstairs? He said. You're not upstairs anymore. Down here, you're just another pair of hands. That's all I need from you. He pointed down the row. 500 boxes from receiving dock to section D14 before lunch, he said. You get a 15-minute break if you finish by then. If you don't, you keep moving. Any questions? Malik stared at him. 500? He repeated. That's insane. You can't expect. Any questions about the work? Mr. Brown said again, his tone unchanged. Malik shut his mouth. He picked up the first box. It was heavier than he expected, full of old files and hardware. The weight bit into his palms. He carried it down the aisle, the concrete floor unforgiving under his feet. After 10 boxes, his back started to ache. After 20, sweat soaked through his shirt. By the time he reached 50, his hands burned. Blisters were forming under the skin. A pair of younger workers walked by, pushing a cart. One of them recognized him, recognition flickering into something like satisfaction. "Hey, that's Jordan, isn't it?" the younger man whispered. "Didn't he used to yell at us for being 5 minutes late?" "Yeah," the other murmured. "Guess he's right on time now." They laughed under their breath and kept walking. Malik lowered his head and grabbed another box. By the end of the shift, he could barely lift his arms. When he stepped outside, the Houston heat felt like a wall pressing against him. He reached into his pocket for his car keys, then remembered. There was no car anymore. The finance company had taken it that afternoon. 3 months of missed payments. In the past, when Head cut it close, Naomi had quietly dug into their savings, sending in what was needed to keep the wheels from coming off. Naomi wasn't there to do that now. He stared at the empty parking spot for a second, then turned toward the bus stop. The ride home was long and crowded. He stood for most of it, gripping a pole, his muscles screaming every time the bus jerked. When he finally stumbled into the small rented room in East End, Tasha was pacing, a handful of shiny plastic cards in her fist. She turned on him as soon as the door opened. "Do you know what happened to me today?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea how humiliated I was?" Malik leaned against the door, too tired to answer. He pulled at his collar, the smell of the warehouse rising from his skin. "I went to Galleria with the girls," Tasha went on. "I picked out a dress. Not even that expensive. I handed over your card, the one you said I could use any time. Declined, in front of everyone. Then I tried the others. Declined. It was like a comedy show. They were looking at me like I was some broke scammer." She threw the cards at him. They hit his chest and fell to the floor. "You told me we were fine," she shouted. "You told me you had a promotion, that you were set. Where's all the money, Malik? Where is it?" Malik's own anger, raw from the day, flared. "With you," he shot back. "It's in your hair and your nails and those bags and those shoes. You think those dinners and trips didn't cost anything? You burned through everything. All the extra. And now," she cut in. "Now your ex-wife is your boss, and you're hauling boxes like a delivery boy." She laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "You're the one who didn't even know who you'd married," she said. "You slept next to money and cried about how poor you were. You idiot." The word landed between them, hot and sharp. They shouted at each other until their voices grew hoarse. Underneath the insults was fear of bills, of hunger, of a future without pretty things to hide behind. Later, when the lights flickered and went out because the power company hadn't been paid, they lay on opposite sides of the thin mattress, staring into the dark, each sure the other was to blame. Across town, rain lashed against the tall windows of Hart Tower. It was late. Most of the building was dark. Only the top floor still glowed. Naomi stood at the glass, watching the storm roll over Houston. Lightning lit the clouds from within. Thunder rumbled, far and low. Behind her, Mr. Sterling laid a black folder on the desk. "Jamal Rivers sent this an hour ago," he said. "I thought you'd want to see it tonight." Naomi turned from the window. She opened the folder and saw the heading on the first page, Toxicology Report. Her throat tightened. Line after line spelled out what the hospital tests had missed the first time: traces of certain chemicals in her blood, the kind found in rat poison and similar substances, small doses, low enough to be blamed on stress, illness, burnout, low enough to build up over time until her body could not take any more. The second section was a series of photos. Tasha at a backdoor shop in a quiet strip mall. Tasha signing for packages. Close-ups of labels with chemical names Naomi couldn't pronounce. Receipts. Dates. Times. The last pages showed a copy of an insurance policy. Naomi stared at Malik's signature at the bottom. Her own name was printed higher up, under the words, "Insured Party." If she died of a sudden illness, he would receive a large payment. Enough for a new life somewhere warm and far away. Naomi's hand shook as she set the papers down. For a long moment, she did nothing. The only sound was the rain. Then she laughed, once. It was not a happy sound. "All that time," she said quietly, "I thought my body was giving up on me because I wasn't strong enough. I blamed myself for being weak. But it wasn't stress making me sick." Mr. Sterling's eyes were sad. "No," he said. "It was someone I trusted," she finished. She remembered the nights he brought her tea, the way he had smiled and said, "You need to sleep, babe. This will help." The memory turned sour in her mouth. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "We have enough to arrest them both now," he said. "If you give the word, I'll call the detectives. They can be picked up in the morning. Quietly. No more contact. No more games." Naomi walked back to the window. She pressed her palm against the cool glass. Lightning flashed, turning her reflection into a ghost for a second. For a moment, she imagined it the simple path. Police, lawyers, trials. She would testify, then go home and try to forget. But even as she pictured it, something in her chest resisted. "I used to think I just wanted them to feel poor," she said softly. "To know what it's like to count pennies. I thought that would be enough. But they didn't just steal my money. They tried to steal my life, piece by piece, quietly, while I said thank you for the tea." She turned back to Mr. Sterling. "I don't want this to end with paperwork in some file," she said. "I want the truth to stand in front of them where they can't look away. I want everyone who ever believed their lies to see who they really are." Mr. Sterling watched her for a long beat, then nodded. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Naomi picked up the last page of the report, the copy of Malik's insurance policy. She folded it once, as if it were just another letter. "Reservations," she said. "At the Magnolia Grand Hotel. A private room. I'll invite Malik to dinner. I'll tell him I want to talk about forgiveness, about canceling his fine. He still thinks I'm the same woman he left in that hospital bed. Let him think it a little longer." "And Tasha?" Mr. Sterling asked. "Shall come," Naomi said. "She won't be able to resist. She still believes she can charm her way out of anything." She set the paper down and picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment, then began to type a short, simple message. "Malik, I've been thinking. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I don't want to live with all this anger. Let's talk. Dinner at Magnolia Grand. Friday at 8. Just us. We can discuss the fine. Maybe find a better way. Naomi." She hit send. Somewhere across the city, in a dark little room that still smelled of cardboard and cheap soap, a phone would buzz. A man who had spent the day carrying boxes would see her name light up his screen and think, "There, she still needs me. She still loves me." Naomi slid the phone into her pocket. Outside, the rain began to ease. The city lights below blinked through the remaining drops on the glass. The trap was set. What Malik and Tasha didn't know yet was that the dinner they believed would save them would be the one that finally stripped away every lie they'd ever told. Malik could hardly believe the message when it came. He read it 3 times in the dim light of the little room in East End, lips moving silently over each word. "Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I don't want to live with all this anger. Dinner at Magnolia Grand, Friday at 8. We can discuss the fine. Maybe find a better way." He held the phone as if it were a lifeline. "I told you," he said, shaking Tasha's shoulder. "I told you she couldn't stay mad at me forever. She still loves me. She wants to talk about canceling the fine." Tasha sat up, hair messy, makeup smudged. "Or she wants to poison your drink this time," she muttered. He ignored her. "This is it," he said, excitement giving him back some of his old swagger. "I go in humble. I apologize. I play it right. She'll drop the fine. Maybe even give me my old position back. She's soft, Tasha. She always was." Greed and desperation fought with suspicion in Tasha's eyes. In the end, greed won. They spent the last of their little cash on a taxi and did their best to look like the people they used to pretend to be. Malik dug out an old suit that smelled faintly of damp. He ironed it on the bed with a borrowed iron, nearly burning the sleeve. Tasha borrowed a dress from a neighbor, pinned it in at the waist, layered on what was left of her expensive perfume. In the cracked mirror, they both squinted, convincing themselves the image looking back was still high class. The Magnolia Grand Hotel was another world. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, quiet music floating above the soft murmur of wealthy guests. Staff in crisp uniforms moved with smooth efficiency. As Malik and Tasha stepped into the lobby, they both straightened, trying to add inches to their height, smoothness to their steps. A host led them down a hallway to a private room. Inside, a long table was set for a formal dinner. White tablecloth, candles, fresh flowers, silverware glinted in the soft light. But only one place was occupied. Naomi stood at the far end, on a slightly raised platform, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the table behind her. She wore a modest evening gown and a simple wrap, but there was nothing simple about her presence. She seemed taller than Malik remembered, though her actual height had not changed. Confidence did that. For a moment, Malik's hope flared bright. She hadn't walked out. She hadn't refused to see him. That meant there was still something to work with. He let go of Tasha's hand and moved toward the platform, arranging his face into the most remorseful expression he could manage. "Naomi," he began softly. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I've been thinking about everything, and He reached out, arms opening, ready to draw her into a hug that would close the distance and, he hoped, reopen his access to her forgiveness and her money. Naomi didn't move. She raised her hand between them, palm facing him. "Stop," she said. "Don't you dare touch me with those hands." The words cut through the room. Malik froze, his arms still half open. "Naomi, please," he said, trying to recover. "I came here to fix this. I know I made mistakes, but I'm ready to change. I thought you wanted to talk." "Oh, we're going to talk," Naomi said. "But first, you're going to watch." The lights dimmed. A soft mechanical sound came from above as a large screen slid down behind her. A projector hummed to life. On the screen, a familiar kitchen appeared, the same counters Naomi used to wipe, the same fridge covered in old magnets and small notes. Tasha's back filled the frame. She poured powder from a small packet into a mug of warm milk. Malik stepped into view, laughing, taking the spoon, stirring. The audio was clear. "If we keep the dose small, nobody will ever know," his recorded voice said. "She already looks sick all the time anyway. Once the insurance money hits, we're out of Houston." In the real room, Malik's knees went weak. That's edited," he stammered. "Somebody faked that. That's not." The video continued. On the screen, he carried the mug into the bedroom and set it on the nightstand next to Naomi's sleeping figure. He leaned over, brushed her hair back, and murmured, "Drink up, babe. This will help you sleep." The footage cut to a stack of documents laid out on a table. The camera zoomed in on a life insurance policy. Naomi's name, Malik as beneficiary. The screen went black. The lights snapped back on. Malik blinked, momentarily blinded. As his eyes adjusted, he realized the room was not as empty as he had thought. At the tables he had barely glanced at when he walked in, people sat watching him in silence, members of the Hart Board, major investors like Mrs. Gloria Fields, a few longtime partners of Langston Hart. Near the walls, cameras and microphones glinted in the hands of local reporters. By the door, a group of uniformed officers stood waiting. Tasha sagged against a chair, one hand clutching her chest. "This is entrapment," she burst out. "You can't just, this is illegal, right? Tell them, Malik." Malik didn't answer. He couldn't seem to find his voice. Naomi stepped forward, taking the microphone from the stand. "Everyone in this room has asked me some version of the same question over the last few months," she said, her voice clear. "Why was I so harsh with my ex-husband? Why did I demote him instead of just letting him go? Tonight, you've seen why." She turned her gaze to Malik and Tasha. "I might have forgiven cheating," she said, and a small sound moved through the crowd. "I might even have forgiven the money, maybe. But slowly poisoning me in my own bed? Smiling at me while you stirred it into my cup? Planning trips with my life insurance? That, I do not forgive." Malik finally found his breath. "This isn't fair," he said, his words stumbling over each other. Naomi. I didn't think it through. Tasha pushed me. Me? Tasha shouted. You're the one who took out the policy. You're the one who kept saying, just a little more, just a little more. Don't you dare put this all on me. They turned on each other, accusations spilling out who bought what, who suggested what, who laughed the loudest. The cameras caught every word. Naomi let them argue for a moment, then raised her hand. Enough, she said. The room quieted. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small, laminated sheet of paper. The edges were worn from being folded and unfolded. It was the note Malik had left on her hospital nightstand. She walked down the small steps and stopped a few feet away from him, keeping her distance. This was the last thing you left me, she said. A scrap of paper telling me I was dead weight, that you were done carrying me, that I should pay my own hospital bill. She slipped the note into his suit pocket. Now it can be the first thing the detectives read when they open your file, she added. The lead officer stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. Malik Jordan, he said, his voice firm. You are under arrest for attempted murder and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Tasha tried to bolt for the door. 2 officers caught her easily. Let me go, she screamed. We didn't actually kill her. She's right there. Look at her. She's fine. Attempted murder is still murder, Naomi said softly. You just failed. The cold click of metal around Malik's wrists sounded louder to him than the officer's voice, louder than the reporter's, louder than Tasha's sobs. He looked up at Naomi one last time. In his eyes there was fear, regret, and a strange, painful understanding of exactly what he had thrown away. She did not look away. The officers led Malik and Tasha out through the side door, flashes from cameras popping as they passed. The door closed. The room exhaled. Naomi stood for a moment, breathing slowly. Then she turned back to the investors, to the board, to the people who had watched her not as a victim tonight, but as a leader. We have a lot of work to do, she said simply. Let's get back to it. 6 months later, a very different door slammed shut behind Malik. This one was steel, with a small, narrow window and a heavy lock. The maximum security prison was cold even in the Texas heat. The air smelled of metal and disinfectant, and too many men in too small a space. The newspapers had moved on to other stories, but Malik couldn't. The courts had given him 20 years. Somewhere in the middle of those first months behind bars, he suffered a mild stroke. Half his mouth drooped now when he tried to speak. One arm stayed stiff and weak at his side. Sometimes he dreamed of Naomi bringing him tea and woke up to a plastic cup of water and a gray blanket. He thought of her hands massaging his feet after long days back when he still came home to her. He remembered the way she used to laugh at his dumb jokes, how she saved the biggest piece of chicken for him without ever saying a word. In his cell, he whispered apologies she would never hear. No one visited. His coworkers avoided even saying his name. His family, embarrassed, distanced themselves. Tasha served her time in another facility, always in the middle of some fight. Malik had all the time in the world to understand that he had not just lost money. He had thrown away the one person who had loved him without calculation, and there was no one to blame but himself. On the other side of Houston, on top of Hart Tower, the wind felt different. It was a cool evening. The sun was slipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in gold and soft orange. The city spread out below like a living map. Highways, neighborhoods, lights flickering on one by one. Naomi stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace, hands resting on the railing. Her silk wrap fluttered in the breeze. Her face was calm, lined a little more, not from age but from the weight of the months she had carried. Behind her, through the glass doors, soft sounds drifted out from a recent celebration. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone rolling up a banner that read, Heart Women's Freedom Foundation, Grand Opening. She had done it, with the help of Mr. Sterling and a small, determined team. Naomi had turned part of her inheritance into a foundation that offered legal help, job training, and seed money to women who had been where she once had been trapped, dependent, told they were nothing without the very people hurting them. Every time she sat across from a woman who thought she had no options and watched the light slowly come back into her eyes, Naomi felt something in herself heal a little more. The glass doors slid open. Mr. Sterling stepped out carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her and stood beside her, looking out at the city. "When I first saw you in that hospital bed," he said, "I never imagined I'd see this day. Not like this. Your father would be, I don't even know if proud is a big enough word." Naomi smiled, a small, real smile. "Maybe he sees it," she said. "Maybe he doesn't. Either way, I feel him here." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mr. Sterling turned his head, studying her profile. "Happy, ma'am?" he asked quietly. Naomi let the question hang in the air. Once, her answer would have depended on Malik, on whether he came home in a good mood, on whether he said she was enough. Now, she thought about the women at the foundation, about the way her own chest felt, not empty, not itching for revenge, but steady. She took a slow breath. "I'm very happy," she said at last. "Not because everything is perfect, not because I got even, but because my happiness doesn't belong to anyone else anymore. It's mine. I built it out of every tear I cried, and every woman I refused to leave behind." Down below, the lights of Houston brightened as the sun dipped lower. Naomi raised her mug a little, as if to toast the city, her father, the woman she used to be, and the one she had become. Her story did not end when Malik went to prison. It didn't end with revenge. It continued every day she woke up, chose herself, and chose to open doors for people who still stood where she once stood. And somewhere, out there in the dark, other Naomis were listening, wondering if they too could start over. If you've stayed with Naomi's story all the way to the end, thank you for spending this time with me. If this video touched you, helped you, or simply kept you company for a little while, feel free to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next stories we share here. If there was anything that didn't sit right with you, please tell me in the comments. Your thoughts help me grow, learn, and tell these stories better for you. And if you still don't quite know how you feel, you can always tap the like button anyway so I know you made it here to the last words. Thank you, truly, for watching until the very end. You can click on the videos on the end screen now to dive into more life stories waiting for you on this channel.